Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I'll tell you what, it's really nice to be part of a vibrant and active online community. And so today I had the privilege of watching a couple really cool videos which referenced me because hey, that's cool. I'm famous. Well, actually not really, but I got to watch a really cool video by Dark Age of Role Play Games. Who's coming out of retirement again to do yet another response video. I love that. It wasn't just responding to my video on ambiguity, but also to Runeslinger's video on that. So that was a really cool video. I enjoyed watching that quite a bit. Made a lot of great points. I drew them out the way I thought I was going to draw them out, which is great. And also, I watched a recap video. Finally, Runeslinger was able to do a recap video of the solo session he ran for me. For All for One, which this video is not going to be about that, but it was cool. It was cool to kind of see his take on it and just how he was really on point with a lot of things he thought I might have been thinking or whatever. So that was a lot of fun. It's just nice to be part of. The internet's cool. It can cause a lot of problems, but it can be really cool. It's nice to be part of that really vibrant community. Anyhow, I want to talk today instead about swashbuckling. And this is not an authoritative look or my opinions on swashbuckling. It's kind of like more my history with it. Because it was really funny, Anthony and I did a video, and I think it was just about ubiquity, and we're talking about, it was like unrehearsed, and he said, when you think swashbuckling, what do you think? And the first things that came out, to mind to me was like Sinbad. I'll get back to that and why that's the case, and why that kind of informs, how I look at the genre now, because I'm playing a game where swashbuckling is part of it. I've never really tried to emulate swashbuckling, and I'm also emulating swashbuckling with 3 other people who have slightly different, takes on what it is. In terms of like gaming, though, I can tell you that the first time I saw anything that was swashbucklery was in this magazine right here. I think this is from 1983. It's 82. Dragon number 73. Cover's falling off here, and I've referenced this already in another video. The Duelist. There he is. The Duelist. Those are, AD&D's attempt at a swashbuckler kind of guy. Fun little class, or NPC class, and gave him a few little abilities to kind of make him swashbucklery, more of like a fencer, and that sort of thing. And one of the big shticks was the guy didn't wear armor, and his armor class, his defense got better over time as he went up in level, and he was better at fighting against armed opponents, and especially against people that had the same weapon, all that kind of stuff. It was a decent try for that game. Did I use it very much? No. And now I'm playing in this game here where we've got supernatural swashbuckling horror in All for One Regime Diabolique, but it has a system that provides a certain level of action, or certain level of ability, shall we say. And this other game, which I've only picked up the player's handbook from, I want to pick up the Game Master's Guide, the old first edition of 7th Sea, which is another cool game. It's a very different game because it promotes a very different level of heroic ability. And so it gives you a different experience. So back to me and my experience, or my history with swashbuckling, or what I thought that was. As a kid, I'm reading all these books that were more like Tolkien-esque. I think Tolkien was probably the first, real fantasy I read. My dad gave it to me when I was 5. And, I read like things like Narnia, too, which don't go very much into combat, but it gives you that kind of vibe. It's sort of that, it's fantasy, it's the, really... the descriptions of the combat aren't all that long, and it's not all that flowery, and it's usually just involving grunting and death. And then there's all other kinds of books, like that, where it was just sort of that, mass battle, armies, just the fantasy vibe. And usually there's somebody shooting magic somewhere, and there's usually an evil sorcerer, all that good kind of stuff. But in many times in a lot of those books, you realize mostly what the characters are trying to do is get the heck out of that combat as fast as possible, because it's deadly and they're probably going to die. They're not really into it. I did not read a lot of books that dealt with more flashy stuff. But I guess around the same time, every year around Christmas, sometimes around the holiday seasons, a few things would happen cinematically on TV, because we're talking back in the days of like 3 channels. Some of you young ones, you won't believe this, but like literally I could get 3 channels at my house. I got channel 8, channel 3, channel 5. I could get the picture in black and white, but it actually had the sound of a local radio station come in, and we had an antenna in our house. We had this big dial, and you turned it, and you could hear the antenna turning around on your house. I sound like an old curmudgeon, I'm 49, but that's what happened. I grew up in a semi-rural area, so that's what you got. And occasionally you could get like 61 and 20, and you had to sit there and twiddle this UHF knob to fine tune it and get in there. So it wasn't a hell of a lot of stuff on TV, is my point. You kind of watched what was on. And so every year around like Thanksgiving, The Wizard of Oz was on. Also, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory tended to come on around that time. In New Year's Eve, you were going to get like a Marx Brothers marathon. I think it was the usual thing. I think there was a couple other marathons that came on right around New Year's Eve, or right around that time. But to the best of my recollection, as a kid, around that time, Christmas, Sinbad came on. And so you got to watch these Sinbad movies with all that terrible, claymation or whatever the heck, stop motion animations, the one that the Cyclops and the skeletons, and it was great. So that was one of my first introductions to swashbuckling. And so when I said Sinbad, I meant, to me, this swashbuckler is a guy in my head who doesn't necessarily wear armor, who moves around a lot, and just a fast combatant. And it usually involved some kind of a pitched battle. It was not about dashing and daring do and panache. There could be some swinging on ropes, because this guy was that very kind of athletic, acrobatic guy. That, to me, was what swashbuckling was, and that's probably going to stick in my head forever. Not super duper, crazy, over the top. Like, I think that one of the other things I said was maybe like Pirates of the Caribbean would also be sort of swashbuckling. And that's really, getting pretty, they start to do some stuff there that's pretty wild at that point. And that's, that to me was another idea of swashbuckling. I'm trying to think of what else would come to mind. Like something like the beginning scene, the Princess Bride, all that little sword fighting there. But, I was less into the flash, and the witty repartee back and forth, was less appealing to me, or that's not really what I gravitated towards. Also, as a kid, and this is going way into my psyche and my, what I used to read, but I guess that's part of what makes me who I am, and why, I think the way I do about certain genres. I read a lot of the Greek myths. My parents had a bunch of books about that, and so I devoured those things and read them over and over again. So I'm not going to say that was swashbuckling, but to me that kind of fell into that sort of same kind of genre, or overarching genre of something like Sinbad, where you have the really kind of like I guess it's Bronze Age, travelers with really just about nothing, and they're going up against fantastic beasts and tribesmen and all these other people. So that was kind of my I didn't sit there and think to myself, well, the Argonauts are swashbucklers, but they were kind of swashbucklers in my head. So I had less experience with things like Musketeers and Zorro and whatnot. I think I probably watched a few flicks when I was a kid, and it was generally more of the I think I was young. There wasn't a heck of a lot of stuff on TV, and a lot of times they were boring because they talked a lot. So I was less interested in those movies. That stuff just doesn't appeal to me. I think to this day, I quipped a friend of mine recently that, or a couple friends, that I'm really just kind of like a kid when it comes to my taste in books and media and film. I become, I just gravitate towards stuff that's really kind of meant for people that are younger and doesn't have as much depth. Not completely, but I like all that sort of stuff. But for whatever reason, like stuff like Musketeers, Zorro, that sort of swashbuckling was not the tops on my list. I've certainly enjoyed watching stuff afterwards. I hate to say it, but I really enjoyed the 2011 version of the Three Musketeers. It was a lighthearted, silly film. I took it for what it was, but I was, stuck giving blood one day, and I'm like watching the film. It was great, it's just what I needed to sit there and pass a couple hours, and it was entertaining. So I don't bring that's a really long-winded way of saying I don't bring a heck of a lot of expectations to the table about what swashbuckling is, but I also bring, I think, some of my gaming sensibilities and preferences to the table. When I've gone into this genre and to a lot of things, a lot of other games, and part of what I've discovered, and this is going to go back towards my three-tier hypothesis. I don't know if you watched my channel before. You should be watching everything. I talked about how like old D&D, very very old. They didn't really call them tiers, but they had this idea they were heroic. There was a heroic level of characters, and then there was a normal level below that, and then a super heroic. And so I tend to gravitate towards games or towards gameplay, or if I'm playing a class and level-based game, towards the levels which provide sort of a heroic feel, where it's not so over the top. It's not that I don't enjoy doing that, but it gets old a little fast. And so I honestly, to be honest, I read this game, 7th Sea First Edition. I think I would have a blast playing it. I don't know, and I want to try it out. I don't know for how long, like for a sustained campaign, whether or not it would be my thing. I am really enjoying the heck out of All for One Regime Diabolique. But that game seems to sit squarely in the low end to middle end of Heroic, where these characters are sort of larger than life. Let's maybe even say the lower end of Heroic. They're larger than life. They're larger than life than the average person. They're more capable than the average person, depending on what you choose to put your experience or your what is your character known for. You know, Breeze Core is larger than life because he's in the social situations. You know, he can just con people out of anything. You know, you pretty much give him your clothes. He's that good. He's a shark. And you know, Jean-Marie is really good in terms of like just plain old occult type stuff. As far as information gathering, sneaking around. And he's the guy that you want on the street getting all this down and dirty information and what have you. Martin's got his whole magic shtick going on. And, you know, then Philippe is a swordsman. None of them are really superhuman at these abilities. You know, the closest thing you're really going to get to superhuman, I think of the two characters, Martin, probably the magic stuff is just so out of control. That's so bizarre. But it takes a lot of effort for him to get, results. And I was going to say Briscoe. Socially, he can talk himself out of some situations were just amazing. Philippe, on paper looks like he's this fantastic swordsman, which he is, but he starts fighting 2 or 3 people, he gets to be in trouble just like anybody else. So that's a digression down to, I didn't want to start getting into the mechanics of the system, but that, I enjoy that kind of level of like, okay, we're cut above, we're competent, we're not banana superheroes. We can do some pretty cinematic stuff from time to time, but there's a risk involved. It looks like there's a little bit less risk involved with this game, but once again, I'm not saying I wouldn't enjoy playing it. I really would love to play it with some people that are, that are good at it. So I'm actually going to hope to connive Sebastian into running something for me someday. But I had my experience with playing other games, like let's just say, like other variants of D&D, like the more modern ones, where part of my distaste was the whole rules complexity and all the stuff that I've talked about, ad nauseum. However, part of the uncomfortability I had with those systems over time was just the fact that the characters felt too powerful. And I'm not criticizing those systems. I'm just saying that didn't sit. My preference all of a sudden was like, I'm not really digging this as much. It was fun for a while. It was actually a hoot for a while. But if you watched, I think it's Generations was the name of the Star Trek movie. I should know that because I'm more of a Star Trek fan than I am a Star Wars fan. But Star Wars memorabilia was a lot easier to get my hands on for whatever reason. I'll bring up my Enterprise sometime. But you got this movie Generations, and so Kirk is stuck inside this Nexus. And now I'm speaking to the geeks here. He's stuck inside the Nexus, and pretty much it's your best day ever, and he can never fail. So he's sitting there jumping on his horse. He's jumping over this little gorge or whatever the heck that thing is. That little the thing. He's jumping over this thing in Riverbed, whatever, dry Riverbed, whatever it is, over and over. And he finds I can't miss. It was no longer fun. For me, that's what starts to happen in a more super heroic tier. Is I get to this point where this is so cool, it stopped being cool. Because I can't miss. So I understand the allure of the high level swashbuckling, and once again, a lot of fun, but over a period of time, to me, games that have done that in other ways start to become less fun. So, part of it, I think my approach to swashbuckling is just based on my history, what kind of captivated me in the beginning, and then part of it is based on my preference about what do I want a role-playing game to feel like, or where am I most comfortable in terms of character ability. This isn't to say that I don't like exploring all these other games and figuring out what does this game feel like and what does that game feel like, and I've become more and more into just kind of letting it go, accepting let me go find out what this game is like, and just kind of plotting forward and finding out what the actual experience is like. The other thing, which I should have mentioned earlier, which I'm just going to mention at the end of the video because there you have it, is, I went over, when I knew we were going to be playing this game, I realized I'd never read The Three Musketeers. I couldn't even think of sitting through an entire Three Musketeers movie. So, I watched a couple movies, but I went over to my mom's house, and sure enough, she had this book. I think I even actually have a video with I'm holding it up. It's from something like 1928. or 38. Great. The type just goes up and down the page. But I've read the book, and it is so different than the movies. These are not these larger than life characters at all. They're very normal men. It's a little dark. It's a little gritty. They have a lot of faults. D'Artagnan almost gets killed in one of the opening scenes by a bunch of people, that aren't trained combatants, like with sticks. These are not superhumans. These are men that I believe, they have guts. They have more guts than they have talent, and that to me is a big part of swashbuckling. I should have put this in the front of the video, but if you're still with me, here we go. This is the gold right here, kids. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I don't know which version of the movie it is, but I think Francois actually put a couple links to one of the versions of the Three Musketeers, and it's a two-parter on YouTube. They're like a minute and a half long each or something like that. And it's the Musketeers are all going. They're on the front. I forget the name of the town that's controlled by the British. And they need to have a discussion, a private discussion. The only place they're going to have a private discussion in this camp is if they go and have lunch in this kind of like little ruined fort area in between the two lines. They're pretty much going into DMZ, no man's land. And so they're sitting there getting shot at by the British. The British start, coming up and trying to make little attacks on them. They have no idea how many French are there, and it's just 4 of them, and a lackey or 2. And they're huffing and puffing. I think Porthos can barely make it up. The stairs and everything, and they're there, and their wine bottles are getting shot, and they're shooting back as they're having this discussion, and they're doing this stuff. It's in the book. It happens a little bit differently in the book, but it happens in the book. And you start to realize all of a sudden, these guys are more talented than the average guy. One-on-one, they can take one of these English guys, but now you got a whole bunch of them going after them. What really sets these guys apart, what makes them musketeers, what makes them swashbucklers, is their attitude. These guys have guts. These guys, forgive me, they have big balls. That's what it comes down to. They just have the guts. They have the cojones to go out there and just right in the middle of the DMZ, go ahead and eat lunch. Have this discussion, face a few attackers as they're coming in. And they're a little scared. They're like, okay, it's time to leave, guys. They have these giant, larger than life personalities. They have attitude. There should be like a ZZ Top soundtrack going on as these guys, kind of just bombastically make their way through life. That, to me, is another part of the swashbuckling vibe. It's not so much ability, it's your attitude. Can you back it up? Well, sort of, but I can also run really fast. I also have enough acrobatic moves to get myself out of this hairy situation. So yes, I think it's informed by all that. It's informed by my early roots, like what did I like that seemed swashbucklery. It's informed by my preferred style of gaming in terms of how heroic my character is, and also very informed by this idea it's not so much their capability, it's their attitude. So, once again, long video, but there you have it.